Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor here. Today, we're gonna do story day today. I'm gonna talk about some stories and some things that have happened to me. I want everybody here, though, to think about these stories and think, what would you do? I've been getting a ton of emails lately, and no offense to anybody, this is not a crack on anybody, about how bad they're doing. And again, no crack. Don't think that at all. I just want to address some emotional and some aspects on why I do this, and what drives me more than anything else, and what it's going to take you to get that drive, or maybe to get to a certain plateau, or to get through a bottleneck. Everybody's got a bottleneck, it seems, these days. There's always something holding you back a little bit that's hurting your business. So sales are down for a lot of people. I've gotten a lot of emails, and I mean a lot, more so I don't want to just keep hammering this in, but I'm going to bring some stories back on what it took me to get to a point to have to do this, to not want to work for anybody else, and to do what I have to do beyond, any other aspect of my life. This just pretty much is in control of what's going on in our life right now, eBay, which is fine. This is great. Everything's going good, so I'm not going to complain about that. But we didn't just get to this point overnight. In the past, I'm just going to give you out some scenarios, some things that actually happened, some horrible things that happened while I was working, not necessarily to me, but just in general. You really need to think about things like this, and what would you do? I say this because 90% of everybody, it's probably like 95% of everybody who tries this sort of business is going to give up, or they're going to fail and not going to make it. One thing I can tell you, a large number of people like me that are doing YouTube and doing reselling are old managers. The bearded picker Scott. Scott used to be a restaurant manager. There's 3 or 4 more that I personally talked to as well. So there's some temperament you have to take. That's why I say everything is just the cost of doing business. Don't sweat the small stuff. I do that because I've experienced some horrid things working for somebody that most people, were brought to tears, in the presence of this happening. So, I'm just going to give you some scenarios, some honest to God, truthful stories that happened, and let you know a little more where I come from. So, I still got a Bolo video coming out today, so this is just an extra one. I just wanted to hopefully reassure some folks and draw some conclusions on all this for them. Help them to understand what it's going to take you to get over that hump, or to bust it an extra 10 hours a week, or whatever it takes you to do. First scenario, working for Einstein Brothers. It's a bagel company. I was a regional, started off handling it in a small facility. I had a woman that worked for me. She had cancer. I knew this, I knew the whole thing. She had cancer. She was having tests and things done, and I worked around her as best I could. She had appointments and things. She didn't always tell me about them, and I got into it with her. You got to tell me I'm behind. I've got schedules. I had to have product out on a delivery. We handled a fleet of vans. Anyway, long story short, she wouldn't tell me, so I kept writing her up, and it came to a point where I needed somebody else. I couldn't deal with this. I know she's got cancer. That doesn't negate the responsibilities to the job. I know it's harsh in the whole works. I understand that, but I had to fire her. I fired her. She was crying. She was upset. The whole works. She called her husband. She left, came back later on that day. She got down on her knees and was just crying. Her husband, after I still said no, came in and literally threatened me. And, he wanted to beat the heck out of me and the whole works. So, that was an experience that, you harden yourself, I guess you can say, from stuff like that. You don't look at all those small things. I mean, I felt for the woman, outside of a work situation, my heart would have went out to her. But, you've got to separate business from personal. That's a key thing right there. Someone who was taking it personal wouldn't have fired her. They would have probably let some of their business suffer because they wouldn't have been able to handle that situation. That's a large number. I'd say at least 60% of the people out there wouldn't want to have dealt with that situation, or would have dealt with it terribly. I wasn't upset when I went home because I can separate the difference. That's just one example. I've seen people die where I've worked. I worked at a resort on West 192 in Orlando and Kissimmee area. There's been people that died there. And I'll give you a few incidences from there too, on why I'm hardened to you know, all that small petty stuff. And you know, again, I'm nothing special. I've just got stuck dealing with all of these kind of things as a general manager or regional stuff that most people would never know even happens. And at this place, I had a call that, you know, this lady's husband needed some help. You know, he was turning blue. I get out there, the guy's dead. You know, and the wife doesn't get it. And I told her, you know, and the ambulance was on the way, and she's screaming. It was just a terrible situation. That was the second one in that same park. It was a retirement park. Somebody died at a bingo event even. Another incident at that same park. You know, I'm the one who has to deal with all this. I'm the one who calls family members when something happens, because I'm the one responsible for our guests in the park as the weekend manager or the manager on duty at the time. So that's what you got to do with these. I've had to go to hospitals when we had an employee hit two elderly folks walking across the street with a golf cart. And I may have told this story before, but she knocked them both unconscious, compound fractures, bones sticking out of the skin. I mean, it was just a horrid experience. The golf cart was trashed. And I know that's not really the concern, but I say that because these folks are the reason the golf cart was trashed. So it was a horrid experience. I had to call the family in England. They were British. They were on vacation, you know. The comments you get, you know, what happened? How did this happen? My company tells me I can't tell them this. I can't tell them that. You know, you draw such a fine line. You got to be able to handle so much in doing a business. You know, I know it's not like that in eBay, but this is what drives me. You know, this is literally what drives my business. I was working at Eckerd's on, I won't give you the street. I don't want any litigation coming back, but this is a true story. I worked for Eckerd's at night. It was the only one at the time that was opened all night long in Orlando, and I was the manager working all night. We got robbed, I don't know how many times, but the time I said I wasn't going to do it anymore, they pistol whipped one of the nicest people I had working there at the register for the safe. You know, what are you going to do? I had a gun drawn on me. You know, open the safe, do this, do that. You know, they shoved me into the wall and all that stuff. No big deal. But, you know, the point is that, you know, you never know what happens. I could have been shot that day. You know, it's incidences like that drive you to stay away from that industry. I won't work for somebody else. The last place I worked prior to doing this and going to school and all this was robbed, and the manager that I was taking over because he was stabbed in the restaurant and robbed. You know, do you want to do that job? You know, I do it did it back then because I had to. I had to put food on the table. You know, it hardens you up. You know, you don't lose sight of the interest, I guess. You don't lose sight of what's important, and you don't lose sight of where you're going in life. And what's important, you know? So, you know, I had epiphany looking at my age a few years ago when we got out of college and there wasn't much there. And, you know, these days I'm going to try it. I'm going to do whatever I can to not have to go back to those situations. That's just a small handful of, you know, some of the situations I've dealt with. You know, I've had people beat up in the restaurant. I've had beer bottles thrown at me. I've had windows bashed. I've been threatened a dozen times with, you know, my life at a restaurant, either by employees or by customers I've called the police on. I've had people show back up with a knife in the restaurant to stab me and, you know, take care of the situation, you know, after I've kicked them out or called the police too. The first day I worked at Applebee's, the very first day I worked at Applebee's in Mississippi, someone was stabbed in the restaurant I worked in. Very first day, the first day I was there. And it was a manager, mind you, that was stabbed. He was dating, off the record, a girl in the front of the house as well as a girl in the back of the house. And the one girl found out and went back and stabbed him over it. Dirty, rotten scoundrel and things like that. You know, that's just the things that happened. Blood in the kitchen, the police there. That's my first day. No exaggeration. These are all true stories. No reason to make these up. My wife is my witness for most of these. She wasn't there, but she knows. I've, you know, had to fill out police reports. Working at Applebee's, another Applebee's story. And again, nothing against the company. This is nothing to do with any specific company whatsoever. This just has to do with life and things that happen anywhere you work. One of my seaters from the front of the house came to me with a horrible story. She had some bruises on her and the whole works. And she came to me. She was 16, and she had to tell me that her father had been raping her for several years. I mean, What do you tell, what do you do for a minor like that? And as the law states in Mississippi, or basically federal wise, I would say, you're required to report that to the authorities. She's a minor, and she's under my custodial care, I guess you could say, while I'm the manager of that store. So that's another issue you have to worry about, If you have minors working for you, as I did, sometimes there would be issues, and the minor, the son or the daughter would tell their mom they were fired for no reason or this, and then the parent would come down there and, have it out with you, It's just that kind of thing. Or you'd have a spouse come in there after you fired, their other half, and try and get in with you, and threaten you and all this stuff. That's the kind of thing that happens. I've been hit, I've been punched, I've been pushed. The things that happen in the real world as a manager are horrendous. I had to hire armed police for restaurants and places I've worked before because of all the issues, because I was losing customers, because of fights that were uncontrollable. And, there's not much you can do about them to a certain extent without getting physically involved in some of these. I've been robbed in so many places I've worked. Do I want that life? Does my wife need to worry that, I'm working all night at a truck stop, with $500,000 in cash that, has been robbed? One of the places I worked, a guy was forcing his girlfriend to pimp out, and when she wouldn't do it anymore, he dumped her off in the parking lot after beating her up. He dumped her in a ditch, and that happened right there while I was there, The things that, I've unfortunately seen are horrendous, and those are just a few of them. I'm not going into a ton of other issues that have happened, and this isn't a brag story. This isn't, this isn't anything else other than this is real life. This is what you experience working in establishments for 20 years of your life. This is literally what you see. Even working at, prestigious places like Disney, I saw a stabbing in our restaurant. Somebody shot and killed their girlfriend in a bathroom there while I was there. People died while I was at Disney. Construction crews and things like that. I've seen people that were massively injured from rides. I've seen a lot of stuff like that, Stuff happens, wherever you're at, no matter how much you secure something or do safety features. So, that's where I come from, and that's just a touch on it, honestly a touch on it. I still think, and, things will pop into my head that I've unfortunately seen. Another, just a perfect example, even outside from work. My wife was pregnant. We had just got back from a visit she was due in just a couple weeks. We had just got out of Taco Bell, and then we had pulled onto the main street, and this was in Florida on Highway 50, actually. There's a Taco Bell there in a Winter Garden area, I think it was. And a gentleman was running across the street. Some lady cut off into the turning lane and clobbered him, hit him at 40 miles an hour. He went flying, landed right next to my car. I got out of the car. He had his skull was open. There was blood just spewing out. Of course, I did what I could. I took my shirt off. I held the pressure on till the ambulance came, a pool of blood. I mean, it's experiences that again, these aren't brag experiences to say the least. I would rather have not had these in my head in many incidences because, I don't like, messing with blood and medical stuff. So, I mean, I do stuff because that's what you should do as a person. But again, I separate all of this out from business and pleasure and stuff. My epiphany years ago, and this is 5 or 6 years ago when I first started full time, is I'm not going to pass up chances because I'm afraid or I'm nervous or I don't know how to deal with the situation or, it's just too tough. I'm just not going to do that. I've got a video on being tough and how this is right up here. If you really want to get into motivation in life, just watch this video up here as well too. eBay's not easy in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to say this again, like 95% of everybody who tries this are going to fail. You've got to have a temperament, a hardened atmosphere. And again, everybody can get that. There's nothing special about me. It's 20 years of experience dealing with a load of just manure, I guess you could say. And as well, I've done eBay most of that time, too. I've done eBay since eBay started. So I've grown this business persona of being strictly business while I was working for these places and while this stuff was going on. eBay was always our saving grace, always. eBay was the only monster in the room at the time. It was just eBay. So, I've grown up on eBay. My marriage has been surrounded by eBay. my life, my kids. You know, and eBay's not the world to me. Of course, my family is everything. But, you know, this is the stuff that drives me to do this more than anything else. And with December, with the issues with my son, for those who don't know, my son does have a pre-existing condition that we found out about in December. It's heart-related. It's something that goes in the family. I've had, you know, issues. My father died of a heart attack. So it really touches home. And you see what's important. And you really change up. And we've changed. I had a second epiphany when we found this out in December. So, you know, you've got to change up. You've got to see things in a different light at some point. You've got to take this in a whole new aspect of your life. I'm not going to worry about, you know, the feelings or anything else getting in the way. I don't care about all that other stuff. I'm getting older. I've got, you know, somewhere to go with this. You know, I wasted so much of my life, and I know I've said this before, and other people said, you didn't really waste it, and this and that. You know, if you had to deal with, on a daily basis, some of this, just the crap that I had to deal with as a general manager, and then coming from that to this, it's like night and day. You know, I don't have to worry about why I wake up and what I do. This is the first thing I do in the morning. This is literally the first thing I do. I get in here, I turn on all the lights, I got everything running, you know, and then I'm worrying about everything else, you know. It's just what I do. I like what I do. I love what I do. I shouldn't just say like. I love what I do, and it's fulfilling. I can expand on it. I can do other things. I can take this to anywhere I want to. I'm going to fail a lot. I failed so many times, it's not even funny, but to make it, you got to be the one that's going to just keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying 100 times, 1,000 times, if that's what it takes. And if you fail every time, you fail every time. I mean, I can never say that I didn't try something. You know, I don't worry about that. It's not a concern for me anymore, because I know at the end of the tunnel, the end of the road here, I'm helping my family and I'm doing the right thing for who is in my circle, who's in my life, my family, so my kids, my wife. So, you know, you just have to take that at another level. You've just got to see that vision. You've got to have a one-track mind on that vision, and that's all that you're getting to. Your goals, your aspirations, your what makes you is got to be into this. Everything about it. Like if you're a nut on sports, which, you know, I've got many friends who are, a nut on sci-fi, which I am, you've got to be that gung-ho on it that you're just, yeah, I want to scream about it. You know, no exaggeration, you know. You know, that's all I can say about this today. I just want to holler this out. I can't tell anybody if you should quit. I can't tell anybody where you're at in your life or where you're at in your business. I can only give you what it took me to get there. Giving you these stories, again, the story day here, you know, I'm sorry. If it's not you, not interested, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's who I am. That's what brought me to where I am. And that's just a tiny little speck. Some of the stories I wouldn't want to repeat. Some of them were horrible. Some of them were awful. You know, so just take that in consideration. But again, I do have a Bolo video coming out today, so keep an eye out for that. Again, Don the Auction Professor, if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.